The Xbox One X is the most powerful console ever made, there's no doubt about it. Does all that extra power for the $500 price tag though make the device worth owning? Whether you already own an Xbox One or not, let's find out. The Xbox One X is one sleek looking box. If you've ever owned a One S before or just seen it in person, the One X adopts a very similar design with some slight modifications. Rather than having a white case on it, it's now a matte black finish, something more in line with the design of the Xbox One Elite controller and the previous design philosophy between the Xbox 360 and the Xbox 360 Elite. It can stand either vertically or horizontally, it's completely user preference. That sleek black design means that the console tends to blend in more with your entertainment system rather than pop out like the bright white finish of the One S. The Xbox One X is 11 inches long, 9.4 inches wide, and 2.4 inches high, and though the footprint is smaller than the PS4 Pro, it's surprisingly heavier at 8.4 pounds, packing a lot of powerful technology under the hood. The front of the device features a USB port and the 4K UHD Blu-ray player, something completely missing out of the PS4 Pro, yet it's here on the One X and even on the cheaper One S. Before jumping into the internal hardware, let's take a look at the back for some I/O. The setup is similar to the Xbox One S. You get an Ethernet port, an optical out port, IR output, 2 USB 3 ports, HDMI in, HDMI out, and a power socket leading to the internal power supply. Internally, the Xbox One X is a beast, especially when you compare it to other consoles. The Xbox One X has an 8-core 2.3 GHz CPU with a GPU clocked in 1172 MHz with 40 compute units. In total, it can calculate about 6 teraflops of computing power, 1.7 more than the PS4 Pro. As for the RAM, the Xbox One X uses a total of 12GB of GDDR5 RAM, 9 of which is allocated to games and 3 remaining for the operating system. For the storage, the console comes with an internal 1TB hard drive, though you'll be able to connect an external hard drive via USB to expand your game library or capture gameplay. Now with all of those technical specifications and such a small footprint, you'd expect the console to run hot or run loud to cool down, but thanks to its vaporware cooling system, the Xbox One S is just as silent as the Xbox One S, while still being slightly colder or cooler than the PS4 Pro, even with the heavier load. In terms of design alone, the Xbox One X is without a doubt a remarkably well-designed console, not just from looks, though I prefer the One S look, but in terms of functionality. You're getting an expensive and powerful box that can run games at 4K resolution yet is smaller, cooler in terms of temperature, and quieter than the PS4 Pro. It's basically the same obvious better design comparison between the original PS4 and the original Xbox One back in 2013. So we've already established it's a nice looking and powerful box, but what can it actually do? Well, like the advertising and the super corny "I experienced the most powerful console" t-shirts suggest, the Xbox One X is the most powerful console out right now. It will pretty much guarantee some performance boost over any other game you throw at it compared to other consoles, though just what those boosts are will depend on the title. Games in your library under the Xbox One X Enhanced category have been specifically updated by the developer to take some sort of advantage of the new hardware. Microsoft, for example, has gone and made enhanced patches for Gears of War 4 and Halo 5, just to name a few. Gears of War 4 gives you the option to prioritize frame rate or resolution. If you choose resolution, the game will run at 30 frames per second in campaign and horde mode, just like before, but now it'll run at a crisp native 4K resolution with ultra quality textures. Pair that with HDR support and you get a beautiful looking, vibrant, and sharp picture. If you choose to prioritize the frame rate, you'll play the game at 1080p 60 with some slightly higher quality textures than before. Both visual modes run versus mode at 4K 60, though it's an adaptive resolution that scales up and down depending on the situation. If you're playing on a 1080p TV, the game will still render at 4K and scale down to fit your TV's resolution, essentially giving you a sharper picture without actually having a 4K TV. This is called super sampling. Any game that supports higher resolution supports super sampling if you only have a 1080p TV. Gears of War 4 is an example of what I like to see most games try to do with their enhanced patches. Give the gamer or the user the option to choose what they want the boost in. But sadly, that's simply not the case at launch. Halo 5, for example, offers a 4K mode that bumps up the resolution to native 4K, but then is missing HDR support. So even though both titles are enhanced Xbox One X games, the benefits aren't the same across the board, and so we start to fall into the same problem that the PS4 Pro currently has, not knowing what that extra power does without googling it or researching the game developer's website. The one thing the Xbox One X does well over the Pro is tell you which games have gotten updated specifically for the hardware. PS4 Pro doesn't even do that, but neither one of the consoles pretty much tell you the benefits in the first place. Something pretty cool with enhanced patches coming out is that some are coming for backwards compatible games like Halo 3 or Fallout 3. Despite these games being years old, they pretty much look darn fantastic at native 4K resolution. Halo 3 at times doesn't even look like a 2007 game anymore. Additionally, Xbox original games can get up to 16 times the pixel count on the One X, providing the sharpest visuals for these classic Xbox games. Now, you don't need to technically have a patch for the game in order for it to have some sort of benefits with the One X. For example, Doom on the original Xbox One ran at 60 frames per second but at a dynamic resolution of 1080p or below. On the Xbox One X, the console will max out that dynamic resolution and the frame rate to whatever the game's code originally told it was the max. So games that may have struggled to maintain 60 frames per second or had a dynamic resolution that at max would be 1080p will pretty much peak out at 1080p 60. There are a few exceptions to this though. The Xbox One X is definitely a powerful machine, and while its CPU has been upgraded just like the GPU, it hasn't been upgraded as much, and so there is a bottleneck with the CPU and more CPU heavy games. Just Cause 3 for example is a game that's incredibly CPU intensive and would dip heavily on both the PS4 and the Xbox One. On Xbox One X, you'll see some improvements in the frame rate, but not enough to say that the game maintains a solid 30 frames per second. The phrase "can it run Just Cause 3" might just become the new "can it run Crysis 3". On the brighter side, loading times for games seem to have a general improvement across the board. The Xbox One X features a faster hard drive, and while Microsoft claims you'll get dramatically better improvement because of it, I've only really noticed an average of 10 to 15 seconds of improvement with most games. It's still a nice upgrade, but probably not as much as Microsoft is making it out to be. Actually, speaking of hard drives, there's a pretty big downside to them, and that's the fact that the 1TB hard drive with this console simply doesn't feel like it's a lot of space with the One X. If you're downloading Xbox One X enhanced games with 4K textures, chances are that the game will hit around 100GB on average if it's at least a AAA game. Gears of War 4, for example, is 103GB while Halo 5 is 107GB. Considering the Xbox One X only has a terabyte of storage, which really only about 780GB is actually free, you'll only be able to fit around 7 to 9 AAA release 4K enhanced games before having to start deleting games or buying an extra hard drive. That's a big bummer when you already have to pay $500 for the console, maybe another $500 for the TV, and now you need at least $50 to $150 for more space. And that's not even accounting the wait time you have to go through every time you download one of these hefty games. Now, while the Xbox One X is all about gaming in 4K, it's also a 4K media box. Like I mentioned earlier, the One X has a 4K UHD Blu-ray player, something completely missing from the PS4 Pro. Now you can finally enjoy your 4K Blu-ray copy of Kimi no Na wa that you imported from Japan. It's a really nice contribution to the console's media features. The online 4K streaming can use some sort of worth though. You do get 4K HDR support from the Netflix app, but the Amazon Instant Video app only supports 4K, no HDR. YouTube's website probably offers the most 4K content out of any other website right now, and oddly enough, the One X YouTube app doesn't support 4K at all. It's rather odd because the PS4 Pro seems to have more 4K media support right now than the Xbox One X, which is all about 4K. It's really that lack of 4K YouTube that hurts the One X, as it's not only the biggest library of 4K content, but also HDR content. In terms of non-gaming and media stuff, there are some general improvements with the Xbox experience on the One X. The dashboard, for example, though it's not running at 4K resolution, it's never been smoother. Everything seems to run nice and fluid with no odd hiccup or slowdown in sight. Finally! Gamers who love the DVR support on Xbox can now use the One X to capture 4K HDR gameplay clips. Now, it should be noted, if you record straight to the Xbox One X, you'll get your 4K clips super sampled down to 1080p. However, if you want to capture native 4K gameplay clips more than 30 seconds long, you'll need to connect an external hard drive to the console and export it to the hard drive. Keep in mind that this must be an external hard drive that's solely for clips. If you already have an external hard drive where you keep your games, then you'll need to get another hard drive on top of that one just for 4K clips. Now, with that hard drive, you'll be able to record an individual clip for up to an hour in 4K resolution. Though if you're going to want to do anything with that clip, you're going to need to bring the hard drive over to a PC to share or edit it. In terms of the feature set, the Xbox One X has a lot to offer, some of which are missing on the PS4 Pro. However, just like the PS4 Pro, it has its own stumbles that hurt the functionality of the system. For example, I love that unlike the PS4 Pro, I can tell which games in my library have been updated for the One X, but I don't like that I don't know what those benefits are since there isn't some sort of across-the-board standard or description of the patch. I love that the Xbox One X has a 4K Blu-ray drive unlike my PS4 Pro, but I'm baffled that they don't have 4K HDR support for the biggest video sharing website in the world. Lastly, 4K DVR support is really neat and handy for reviewers like me, though it requires another external hard drive investment, on top of the external hard drive investment you're eventually going to need in order to have more than 8 games on your console. So yes, the Xbox One X is a very powerful machine, but what about the games? What can we play on it, and why should we be playing it on the One X? Well, in terms of first-party support, sadly Microsoft hasn't really improved on that front. You get the enhanced patches for older first-party games like Gears of War 4, Halo 5, Forza Motorsport 7, and Quantum Break. These are all older titles though. At launch, Microsoft's big first-party release for the console is Super Lucky's Tale, not the most hot-ticket item to launch your new $500 4K box with. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is sure to make a splash when it launches on Xbox One Preview next month, but it's still a month away. Next year we have Crackdown 3, State of Decay 2, Sea of Thieves, and Ori and the Will of the Wisp, all of which show some promise, though at least one of them really should have been here to shine with the console launch. Instead, Microsoft is counting that the power of the console alone will convince you to go back and play your older games again in higher quality. The other card Microsoft seems to be betting on is third-party support. While yes, you can play games like Assassin's Creed Origins and Call of Duty World War II on the PS4 and PC, Microsoft is counting that you'll want to get the best gaming experience at a relatively good price. That's where the One X will really shine. Cross-platform titles like Assassin's Creed and Shadow of War run at higher resolutions on the One X, outshining the performance on the PS4 Pro. Now yes, while you can build a gaming PC that can get on the level of performance if not better, you surely won't be able to reach it for the $500 price tag that the One X currently has. Not to mention they won't include bonus features like a 4K Blu-ray player. The Xbox One X still doesn't have exclusives that outshine anything on Nintendo or PlayStation platforms at the moment, but with all that extra power, it suddenly becomes the best platform to play third-party games on average. Of course, there will be some exceptions to the rule varying on support from certain game developers, but for the most part, the Xbox One X will give you the performance edge when it comes to third-party games. So no, the One X doesn't have The Last of Us, and it certainly doesn't have a Super Mario Odyssey, but it does have the best version of FIFA, Minecraft, Shadow of War, Assassin's Creed, and you can count there being more titles like this in the future. That's currently Microsoft's big incentive in terms of games with this console at launch. In the future, you can expect first-party games like Sea of Thieves and State of Decay 2, though of course that's going to be a while from now. The Xbox One X is one beautiful looking machine. It's beautifully designed not just in terms of looks, but also functionality. For that $500 price tag, you get a level of performance above competing consoles and gaming PCs in the same price range. It's truly a great value in terms of performance for what you pay. With all that said, power is pretty much useless without games, and the One X right now at least, doesn't have a lot of first-party games to play. Unless you haven't played Microsoft's previous games already, you pretty much are stuck playing their older titles again if you're looking for first-party content, and for me, the upgraded visuals just aren't enough for me to want to buy a $500 console to play my old games in nicer looking visuals. The real appeal of the One X comes from third-party games and future-proofing them. Third-party games coming out in the future will most likely run the best on Xbox One X. Assassin's Creed Origins and Call of Duty are pretty early examples of this. At launch, the Xbox One X is a console with a lot of promise. It doesn't have everything I'd like to see from it at launch though. It's missing some sort of first-party attraction, its media suite is missing YouTube, and things like 4K DVR sharing requires extra purchases. It shows promise though. Third-party games out this month already tend to look better on the console. If you want to play older titles, those will run better too on it, and most importantly, future third-party games, and eventually when they do get made, first-party games will hit some of the best performance they can, or at least be on par with higher-end gaming PCs. If you were in the camp of the Xbox not having enough first-party games to play, this won't change your mind about that. But it certainly does add incentive to start playing your third-party games on this console now. Start to add all those pro-consumer features of the Xbox ecosystem like Xbox Game Pass, backwards compatibility, and upgraded performance for those older titles, and you get a console that, though it has some faults, is a worthy gaming investment. That does it for my review of the Xbox One X console. Let me know if you have any questions about it in the comment section down below. I tried my best to cover just about every little bit of detail I could, but I'm sure I missed something that someone has a question of, so feel free to ask in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to answer your question. As always, if you guys enjoy these type of content reviews that are pretty in-depth, I like to think, let me know by dropping a like on the video and subscribe for more content just like this. As always, thank you all very much for watching, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one.